All right, so get this. You know how much I love digging into this AI stuff? Well, buckle up, because today we're diving deep, and I mean deep, into a new language model called Mixtral.
Yeah, this one is really interesting.
Now, I know what you might be thinking, another day, another AI announcement, right? But trust me on this one. This one's got some serious potential. You guys know I wouldn't waste your time with just any old tech hype.
Right.
This paper you sent over, well, let's just say my curiosity is about when we say language model.
So in the simplest terms, imagine like a supercomputer brain, right? And it's been trained on like mountains and mountains of text data.
Mountains of data. Got it.
Right. And this training allows it to kind of understand and even generate human-like language, which, as you can imagine, it has some pretty massive implications.
Okay, I'm with you so far. But where does this Mixtral thing fit in? What makes it so special?
So Mixtrals is not just another language model. It actually uses this incredibly clever technique called sparse mixture of experts. It's often shortened to SMOE.
SMOE. All right, I'm going to write that down, SMOE.
Yeah. Imagine it like this. Imagine that Mixtral's knowledge base is this massive train station.
Okay. A train station, I like it.
Right. And each platform in this station is dedicated to a different skill, right?
Yeah.
You have math over here, you have coding over there.
Okay.
You name it, each skill has its own little platform. And instead of every train, like every task, having to go through every single platform, which would be, super chaotic and inefficient.
Yeah, total chaos.
Right. What Mixtral has is like this super smart conductor, and that's the SMOE router network. And it directs each task, whether it's solving an equation or just writing a poem, it directs it to the specific experts on those platforms that are best equipped to handle it.
So instead of using all 47 billion of its parameters, which are basically like the knobs and dials that control its understanding.
Right. Think of them as like the building blocks of its knowledge.
Okay, building blocks. So instead of using all of those, it's strategically activating only the ones that it needs for a specific task.
Exactly. It's being very, very deliberate about what it uses. So in Mixtral's case, that ends up being about 13 billion parameters active at a time, which makes it incredibly fast and efficient.
So it's kind of like our brains, right? We don't use all of our brain power for every single task.
Precisely.
We're only using the parts we need at any given time. Otherwise, we'd be completely overloaded. And that's what makes Mixtral so cool. It's working smarter, not necessarily harder.
Exactly. And this focused approach, it's a huge part of what allows it to, kind of punch above its weight class, so to speak.
Punching above its weight class, huh? So let's talk about how it actually performs. This paper is not shy about showing off Mixtral skills. They put it head-to-head with some of the other leading language models, and spoiler alert, it's impressive. Remember that Llama 2 7DB we talked about a while back?
Right, with way more parameters.
Significantly more parameters. Yeah, well, Mixtral actually outperforms it.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
In several different areas, including some really tough math problems, which is not usually a language model's strong suit.
Yeah, and that's what makes it so interesting, right? Because traditionally, language models have really struggled with those more abstract, maybe complex mathematical reasoning tasks. But the fact that Mixtral is performing so well, it really suggests that it has a much deeper, perhaps more nuanced understanding of these concepts. It's not just recognizing patterns in the data, it's actually starting to get it.
So it's like it's not just mimicking intelligence. It's actually, like you said, starting to understand.
Right, exactly.
Which is a little bit mind-blowing when you think about the future of, AI problem solving and all of that. And it's not just math. Mixtral's also crushing it in code generation. Again, outperforming models much larger than itself. What's that tell you?
It tells me that this is not just, some one-trick pony. It can do math, it can do coding. It's showing us that it can actually apply its knowledge across all these different domains. Pretty impressive.
Right. And it's not just English either, which is even more mind-blowing when you think about it. Remember our train station analogy?
Yeah, I love that analogy.
So it turns out that Mixtral is multilingual. The paper specifically calls out its strong performance in a bunch of languages, like French, German, Spanish, Italian. The possibilities, right? What could we do with this?
It's huge. Think about it. This multilingual capability. I mean, this is what everybody's trying to get to, this more generalizable intelligence, right? Could this be the key? This idea that AI could be used to build tools, build applications that work seamlessly across different languages and cultures. I mean, it's pretty amazing when you think about the communication barriers that we could potentially break down.
Right. It's like the United Nations of AI, bringing everyone together. Okay, but it gets even more interesting because they also put Mixtral through this really intense test, and it's called the passkey retrieval test. And basically what they're doing is they're assessing how well it can deal with massive amounts of text.
Right, like long documents.
Exactly. Think of it like trying to find a needle in a haystack, but the haystack is like this giant digital document, and the needle is like this one tiny piece of information, this one crucial detail.
Right, and it's got to find it.
And Mixtral aced it.
Wow.
100% accuracy.
Which means it can not only process, but retain information, even within these really dense texts.
Yeah.
Imagine what this means, like for researchers who have to go through, tons of scientific papers.
Right. No more endless scrolling.
Exactly.
This long-range performance could totally change the game.
Yeah.
Okay, but let's switch gears for a second, because we need to talk about something that is super important, especially when it comes to AI, and that is bias. Because we've seen how these language models, they can sometimes pick up on biases that are in the data that they were trained on, which can have some real-world consequences.
Oh, absolutely. That's one of the biggest concerns right now.
So how does Mixtral handle that?
Well, that's actually one of the most encouraging parts of this whole thing, because they really put it through the ringer. They did a bunch of bias testing. They used tests like BBQ, which looks at things like social bias, and BOLD, which analyzes like the bias in the text that it generates. And the results are promising. I mean, compared to a model like Llama 2, Mixtral shows significantly less bias across the board.
So not just powerful, but also potentially more ethical.
Yeah, it's a step in the right direction for sure. And it suggests that this unique architecture that is using, particularly this SMOE approach, might actually be contributing to like fairer, more balanced outputs.
Right.
Now, this doesn't mean that Mixtral is completely bias-free. I mean, achieving that true neutrality in AI is, it's a huge challenge.
Right. We're not there yet.
Not there yet. But these findings are really encouraging.
Yeah, it's like we're seeing this evolution toward a more responsible AI, which is exciting. It's not just about being smart anymore, it's also about being fair and inclusive. Okay, now remember how we were talking about those specialized experts in that Mixtral train station?
Yeah, the different platforms.
Right, so I was so curious about how they were actually dividing up all the work. Like, were there specific experts for math or for coding or for the different languages? Was it that specific? But here's where things get really wild.
I know. This is the part that really blew my mind, too, because you'd expect there to be this clear specialization.
Right, like you said, a platform for each thing.
Exactly. But the research found something totally different.
Okay, you have to tell me, how are these experts dividing up the work, if not by topic? It's like this AI has a secret or something.
It kind of does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's like Mixtral is holding its cards close to its chest. So basically, they took a deep dive into how it handles different kinds of text, like scientific papers, lines of code, even philosophical stuff.
Okay, so what did they find?
Well, instead of those really clear, cut and dry categories, they found that the experts were actually gravitating toward the structural parts of language.
Wait, hold on. Structural parts. Now you're just using big words to confuse me. What does that even mean?
Okay. So imagine you have like a bunch of expert builders, right?
All right, I'm picturing it.
But instead of them specializing in different types of buildings, like houses versus skyscrapers,
Okay.
they're specializing in the different parts of a building, like foundations, framing, electrical, that sort of thing.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
They can apply that expertise to any building. It doesn't matter what the building is ultimately going to be used for.
So that's kind of like what Mr. Ball is doing.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of having an expert for, like, math or an expert for code, it's more like having an expert for if-then statements or an expert for equations, regardless of what those equations are about.
Whoa, that's wild. So it's like instead of teaching someone how to identify every single type of plant, we're teaching them the underlying principles of botany.
Exactly. It's like giving them the tools to understand how language itself works. And the paper actually gets really specific about this. For example, they found that certain experts were consistently handling things like indentation in code
Okay.
or keywords like self in Python.
Right.
Even those little introductory phrases you see sometimes, like question, like in a Q&A.
Right, like the format of language.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost like it's learning the grammar, not just the vocabulary.
Hey, this could be huge for how we develop AI, right? If it can understand the structure of language, that could be applied to anything.
It's a game changer. Imagine if an AI can grasp those fundamental rules, it could learn new languages, adapt to all sorts of new tasks way faster than we ever thought possible.
It's like it has the potential to learn anything, not just what we've taught it. And to top it all off, Mixtral is open source, so who knows what amazing things people will create with this. It's like the Wild West out there right now, and Mixtral just came riding in with a whole new set of rules. But that's all the time we have for today's deep dive. Thanks for coming along on this incredible journey into the future of AI. And as always, keep exploring, keep questioning, and we'll see you in the next deep dive.